What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt Cavill with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Terence Bud Crawford. Now, I know in the boxing circles, we've had Terence Crawford and Tim Tszyu, and a lot of people want him to fight Tim Tszyu, except for Tim Tszyu. Tim Tszyu would rather fight Jermell Charlo for the unified instead of taking on the WBO because Crawford is able, just like he was able at 140 to take on Jeff Horn, at 147, because he had every belt there. That's one of the stipulations and one of the rules of the WBO. He has that right, or that privilege, so to say, to do so. Now, what I don't understand is, I was telling a good friend of mine last night, Mr. Showbiz the Adult, that I don't see why the same energy isn't for Jared Boots Ennis. See, people are saying like, oh, well, Terence Crawford doesn't need to fight Boots Ennis. There's nothing for him to fight Boots Ennis. You know what's for him to fight? And you know what he will get for fighting Boots Ennis? Boots Ennis. Yeah, that's what will happen. I mean, it's all about, he has every belt there, but just because you beat Errol Spence, that's already done. We've seen who was the better out of the two. He's already looked at as pound for pound. Now he's looked at as a true badass because he whooped a guy that everybody thought was just too big for him. He did that with Errol Spence, but it doesn't stop there if he's not planning to retire and he's still the reigning and defending champion at 147. Okay, so I don't see why people are against that fight, and I think what it is, it's the fanboys. See, I'm a fan of Terence Crawford. I'm not a fanboy of any fucking body, because at the end of the day, if you got a clear and present and game challenge for anybody, let's see it. That's why I want to see Usyk and Tyson Fury, because that's the next clear and present challenge for Tyson Fury. So for it to not get made always makes me suspicious, because it seems like the best fights don't get made, or the best fights are so complicated in getting done. Whereas if it was a fight that you didn't want to see, or if it was a fight that you just really wasn't curious about who the winner would be, they get made like that. Now, that's the weird thing about the whole ordeal. They get made so easy, it makes you think like, well, why all the hard fights? The fights that you would think like, you know what, man, I don't know who would really win that, because this guy's pretty good and that guy is very good, and then pretty good versus very good. Let's see how they do together, right? Those fights, they are always complicated, aren't they? Or you have the people that are fanboys of that fighter, and they really don't want that fight to happen. I would love to see Boots Ennis versus Terence Crawford. Why not? If Terence Crawford, as long as he's the reigning and defending welterweight undisputed champion, he should fight the clear and present danger. He doesn't want to fight Tim Tszyu, or is it Tim Tszyu? He doesn't want to fight Jermell Charlo. Okay, so Terence doesn't want to fight Jermell Charlo, but he would rather fight Canelo Alvarez. Well, Canelo Alvarez, as you know, doesn't really see any interest in fighting Terence Crawford. So if that's the case, based on the size difference, he was like, well, I don't want to fight him. Well, I think you should rule that out, and I don't think you should chase anybody that doesn't really want to fight you. You can call him a duck, you can call him a swerve, you can call him anything you want. It doesn't matter, but the show must move on. So who is the next that wants to call you out? So you have to take into account, Terence Crawford called out Errol Spence. Errol Spence called out Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman at one point called out everybody until he started getting hurt or whatever. He got the second belt from beating Danny Garcia. Okay, so when he beat Danny Garcia, he was the unified champion at that point. But then that's when his potential, or his ambition kind of dropped, right? It came to a screeching halt. And when Errol Spence came on the scene, Errol Spence was like, hey, I want to fight Keith Thurman. I want Thurman. Especially after the Kell Brook fight. So, you know, then he was regarded as the boogeyman because Keith Thurman didn't want to fight him. Because Keith Thurman, he done enough. He beat Danny Garcia. He beat Sean Porter. Sean Porter was a very close fight. I think Sean Porter actually beat or won against Keith Thurman. But I'm alone in that, maybe. I'm sure. But anyway, I think people should keep the same energy because Terence Crawford called out Errol the Truth Spence. Okay? And since they fought and he beat him, now Boots Ennis, you know, is the guy that's calling out a potential Terence Crawford fight. So I think Terence Crawford becomes equivalent of Errol Spence at this point because he is now the one being called out because he's the guy that has all the belts, like Errol Spence almost had all the belts when he was getting called out by himself, Terence Crawford. So I say keep the same energy, people, when it comes to these guys fighting, because at one point, at any point, you know, you might be the assassin, but then again, you may become the mark one day. And I think this day is Terence Crawford's day. So for all the fanboys, don't turn down a Terence Crawford fight if you're really a fan for him. You just be confident in the fact that Terence Crawford can beat Jared Boots Ennis, which is not a far gone conclusion. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think of this debate about the Terence Crawford fanboys and a potential fight with Jared Boots Ennis. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch.